Jackson County, located in the panhandle of North Florida, is home to many of Florida's North Star legacy communities. These legacy communities are rural African American communities made up of former enslaved and sharecropper families. After emancipation, many former enslaved peoples and sharecroppers purchased the land they and their families worked on. This land went on to become the foundations for North Star legacy communities. These legacy communities were made up of close-knit groups of families that depended on one another to provide necessary goods, services, and a sense of community. To this day, these communities celebrate events and festivities as they have for generations, showcasing the art and cultural significance across the county. For example, Two Eggs' annual Heritage Day festival provides residents and tourists an inside look at sugarcane, one of the products central to the community's heritage. Traditions such as this originated from emancipation and the Jim Crow era, when newly freed African Americans had to develop their own goods and traditions to provide for themselves. Unfortunately, much of the land originally purchased by these African American communities has been lost over the last few decades. Many of these rural properties were passed down through the family as heirs property, or property that doesn't have one clear owner. A combination of outmigration and new real estate development from outside sources taking advantage of heirs property has shrunk the amount of land that these families own. Today, the economic conditions of these communities have dwindled as members move away or are bought out. Despite these shrinking populations, the cultural components of these communities remain strong. There are still many attractions and pieces of cultural heritage, such as the Renaissance Park Living Heritage Day, the Emancipation Day Festival, May Day, and Jacob City Day for residents and visitors to enjoy. Now, you'll hear from Dr. Sandra Thompson from Florida A&M University to talk more about the goals of our project.
My name is Dr. Sandra Thompson. I am, I guess I would say, the mother of this Legacy Communities Initiative. It began when I moved back home to Tallahassee, Leon County, Florida in 2004, and saw how my community, what we call Bear Hill, and the other communities throughout Northeast Leon County, how they changed, they shrunk. But my particular community, which is Bear Hill, 90 East, it was a Bear Hill plantation. And what we found is like all the other communities that I am aware of, like Union Branch, Rock Hill, St. Pete, Coon Bottom, they were all tied to a plantation. And the individuals who live in these communities are the direct descendants of the enslaved people. And these communities have been such joy for us. It is a connection that ties people that I grew up with and went to high school with and middle school who are from other legacy communities. We are interconnected because we have this shared history of social and cultural norms. And over time, it became, okay, how do we recognize, how do we celebrate, and how do we regenerate these communities so that they become sustainably, economically viable? And so that's how this legacy communities initiative began. And as a project, we determined to use the name North Star Legacy Communities, and which is part of why I'm here right now.
The project, developed through the partnership between Florida State University's Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, and the Florida Department of State, looks to create new social and economic networks for the legacy communities in Jackson County, while preserving their unique cultural history. One way that this project works to create social capital for the legacy communities is through its map book using GIS software. This book provides locations of these communities within the county, as well as information on important landmarks, businesses, socioeconomic conditions, and cultural aspects. Additionally, we work to produce an e-chamber of commerce specifically for legacy community businesses and residents to connect and display their goods and services to a wider audience. This site is shared on local and state websites and publications as a means of increasing tourism and business for legacy community members and the county. The information used for the mapbook and the e-commerce site comes from outreach interviews with community members and businesses. In order for these databases to continue growing, grant funds for the project were used to hire and train community members to collect information through interviews to populate the database.
Well, we got started on this project after Hurricane Michael had impacted the Panhandle, and there was a big effort on the part of government agencies and universities and community groups to figure out how we could engage with communities in the Panhandle to make them more sustainable for future disasters. And it was at that meeting that I met Dr. Sandra Thompson. Dr. Thompson had done extensive research on heirs' rights, properties, and the vulnerability of African American communities in the Panhandle. So you can imagine you have an area of the state that is very vulnerable to natural disasters, and it's also socially and economically vulnerable because of some of the conditions of the legacy communities. So after talking to Dr. Thompson, we put together an application for Department of State small matching grant to look at ways in which we could build sustainability within African American legacy communities in those areas of the state that were particularly vulnerable to natural disasters.
So there are two main components to the Legacy Communities of North Florida community engagement strategy. And we focus on building two things, right? So cultural competency and also using an ABCD approach to outreach. So what do I mean by cultural competency? As planners, it's especially important to cultivate community engagement that's unique to the neighborhood and stakeholders, particularly to work with diverse communities. And so cultural competency is the understanding and acceptance of the beliefs and values of others, as well as the demonstrated skills necessary to work with and serve diverse individuals and groups. And there are really two or three sort of elements, right, to the cultural competency cycle. Cultural awareness, right? So becoming aware and knowledgeable of cultural differences, cultural knowledge, learning about other cultures, and then cultural skills. Engaging and integrating cultural awareness, cultural knowledge, and cultural sensitivity into public agency and planning service delivery practices. So through this process, cultural awareness leads to cultural knowledge, and cultural knowledge contributes to the acquisition of cultural skills. So we utilize cultural competency in tandem with ABCD approaches and our orientation as planners towards equity and social justice. So it's important to document the history of legacy communities to legitimize the untold stories and histories of Black settlements in the planning discourse that have been marginalized and left out of formal planning processes. So students have taken several socially distanced visits to Jackson County legacy communities and visited churches, businesses, and neighborhood stakeholders, as well as attended local events. Also, reflection and training are important in this process. So students completed an NCBI cultural competency training, had several modules of cultural competency readings, and also write critical reflections weekly about their experiences working in diverse communities. So integrating these approaches are about working with community stakeholders and students through relationship building, right? Informal outreach from the bottom up with stakeholders, churches, local, formal, and informal businesses, and professional contacts. A part of the project that we really wanted to incorporate was also capacity building for residents. And this was done through our community partner PACs led by Eugene Pittman and 4 other residents where, along with students, residents receive training and are conducting oral histories and documenting legacy communities to uncover the histories and informal practices, economic development activities in Jackson County. This is central to our work so that local residents can continue to build the economic infrastructure necessary to support business development, cultural heritage, and tourism for legacy communities and the larger Jackson County area.
Hello, my name is Billy Ventimiglia, and I'm serving as the Student Project Manager for the Grant Activities phase of the North Star Legacy Communities Grant. To organize ourselves, we started with 4 distinct teams. An outreach team that worked on making contact with community members and conducting their interviews. A video team that worked on creating the video you're watching today. A website and e-tools team that worked on creating the website, the economic database, and other e-tools, and then a map book team that worked on creating all the GIS maps, as well as our map book and our case and community profiles.
Hi, my name is Melanie Flores. I'm the outreach lead for the North Star Legacy Community Studio Project here at Florida State University. My main responsibility is to establish relationships with the community members, to help facilitate the interview process, and to transcribe the interviews. Our goal for collecting this information is to create the story map and the eChamber of Commerce database. So this information is crucial to our project.
Hi there, my name is Stephen Beaselt, and I'm the team lead for our engagement process video. For the video deliverable, our team is responsible for recording and producing a video that details our engagement process with the Jackson County legacy communities. This includes recording footage from classroom meetings, Zoom interviews with experts, and any trips we are able to make into Jackson County. Developing this video involves storyboarding, writing a script, and editing the footage into a cohesive product. We want to properly document our process so that other groups may be able to follow our example.
Hi, my name is Cassidy Carney. I'm part of the e-commerce team with our North Star Legacy Community Project. We're working on developing a website and the e-commerce database. We really want to emphasize the historical communities and their businesses, and so we want to make sure that they have all the economic opportunities available to them. And the best way to do that, especially during COVID, is through a website.
Hello, my name is Max Hoffman. I'm the team lead for the Mapbook project with Jackson County Legacy Communities. The idea of the Mapbook is to paint a picture for our audience of the current needs and opportunities available in the county and how they relate to the locations of our legacy communities. We want to be able to show where there's the most job opportunity, where we have the highest and lowest incomes, which households and areas don't have access to an automobile. All of these things really lend themselves nicely to a spatial format that mapping provides. To do this mapping, we're utilizing ArcGIS Pro, and we're downloading data from the Census Bureau, from the American Community Survey, and any number of statewide and local sources as well.
My name is Simone Burns, and I'm one of the 2 graduate research assistants that have worked on this project from the pre-grant activities phase. And as research assistants, we intend to bridge the work that was done during the pre-grant phase with the grant activities phase. And we conducted activities such as doing the initial interviews, also conducting historical background, and creating the initial contact list that is essential for the grant activities phase. And our roles are important because they provide guidance and provide a successful continuation of the project among the different student teams.
So to learn more about how to engage and structure the Legacy Communities of North Florida project, we connected with 2 experts in the field to provide insights into their work on Black settlements and approaches to community engagement in diverse communities. Our first guest was Dr. Andrea Roberts. She's an assistant professor of urban planning and associate director of the Center for Housing and Urban Development at Texas A&M University. More importantly, she is the founder of the Texas Freedom Colonies Project, which is a research and social justice initiative documenting placemaking history and grassroots preservation practices in the African diaspora. And so since about 2014, Dr. Roberts has documented Black settlement heritage and grassroots preservation practice among descendants of these historic communities known as freedom colonies. And this is an umbrella term for Black settlements, Black towns, enclaves, or freedmen's towns. And they're located in Houston, Dallas, Austin, and Beaumont, Texas. Until recently, planners have really overlooked unmapped freedom colonies located in rural or unincorporated areas, which is where her work is so important, recording origin stories and grassroots preservation practices of freedom colony descendants. So far, she's mapped over 357 freedom colonies in Texas using Story Map and an atlas, both of which we based our online website documenting the history, locations, and community and resident profiles. We also invited Dr. Evis Garcia, who is currently a professor at the University of Utah in City Metropolitan Planning. And her work addresses the problems of uneven development, as well as grassroots organizing and community development. And she gave an interactive workshop about her work incorporating asset-based community development into her community-based research, as well as her work at the ABCD Institute at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois, where she's also a fellow. So a little bit about asset-based community development. It recognizes the value of 6 local assets. So it's a range of individuals or community residents, also neighborhood resident associations, local institutions like universities, physical spaces, right? So what we think about parks or vacant lots, and economy and exchange, and culture, history, and stories. So ABCD draws upon these assets to build stronger and more sustainable communities. And this came out of sort of a movement started in 1993 by John McKnight and Jody Kretzman on how to achieve long-lasting neighborhood change based on mapping and mobilizing community resources and assets. So ABCD is really the foundation of building power within communities, and it asks different questions about how do you mobilize assets, right? So one question is, what assets can I use to make this community better? So those are the gifts of individuals or residents. Also, what assets my neighbors have that can make our community better. So that's are the gifts of groups, right, or organizations. And then also, what are assets governments, nonprofits, or universities, or other organizations in an area can use to make my community better? So the gift of institutions. So these are a combination of both formal and also informal assets. Much of our work is based on collecting and documenting informal assets through oral histories. So in this instance, we're focused not on the needs or deficits of people in neighborhoods, but rather their assets, skills, and resources that are already present in the community and building upon those.
Following the completion of our project, the E-Chamber of Commerce was placed in the care of a community organization for upkeep and further progress. The legacy communities in Jackson County contain a wealth of culturally significant histories and economic potential. Our project helped these communities to showcase their important personal histories, their community assets, and how others might be able to find them. There are hundreds of other communities similar to North Star legacy communities across the country. We hope that our work can be used as an example for other groups working on historic preservation and economic development projects.